that is an ideal, dreamy world for
Yeah.
sure. So, well, man, hey, thank you for taking a minute out. I love your story as an entrepreneur, restaurant behemoth, author. So, thank you for taking a minute out. I appreciate it.
Oh no, I appreciate you taking the time too. This is gonna be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
I love your nice Irish name too.
oh yeah,
Uh,
exactly. You know, it's funny because the other half of my bloodline is Irish, Scottish, and English. So
me
there's a
too.
really good mincing of things. So we tend to be introspective and good with booze. So it all works out good.
Exactly.
So so
On a
before
completely side note, I ended up moving down here. We retired a little bit, so I ended up my wife and I thought we'd live the good life, and we found out 52 years old, you come down, you're on the beach, you drink all the time because what else? You don't have to worry about tomorrow.
yeah.
Kind of retired. We had to open up a bar so we'd stop drinking. I swear that's what we had
Wow.
to do.
You
And
know,
it worked, by the way.
it's so weird that you say that because every time I go into a brewery or find out about somebody that's behind the bar, they always stop. They're like, you can't mix the worlds.
Oh, yeah.
You gotta give it up. So what a great way to do it. You make some money, you let other people, you can live vicariously through their libations, and you get to kick the habit. It's a great triad.
It really is.
That's wonderful. Well, we'll get into all of that, but before we get into your work, I want to know first and foremost, I know we're going through COVID fatigue talking about it, but it was such a big moment for all of us. How did you survive that time period and how did it change the way that you do things now?
COVID was, you open up your business and the first year is really more figuring it out than anything else. And when we entered that December right before COVID, although you heard about this weird disease that was going on in Italy, this weird thing, but it's not going to hit us.
Yeah.
You know, maybe we'll get a few, but we'll figure it out. And we figured everything out in our restaurant, and we're entering year two, which was COVID year. And in February or so, we shut down for 8 weeks. It was quite an adventure. The only thing that we had that was good for us is that we did kind of figure out the business so that when we did reopen, we kind of hit the ground running again.
Yeah.
So it worked. It worked out well, but a lot of places sadly went out of business that are on our busy street.
So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do now. I know that, you have a new book out and you've had quite a history in the restaurant world. If I was to put you in front of a bunch of third grade students at career day right now, and one of the kids looked up and said, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How would you answer them?
Oh, 3-year-olds, you can
Well,
completely
no,
twist
third
it.
grade. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
third
third
grade.
grade, even third graders. Well, I would actually, I mean, to a third grader, I would actually just tell them that I'm in the restaurant industry. I've been in this industry since I'm a child. I come from an entrepreneurial family. When I was 17 years old, I opened up my first food truck. My father, my grandfather, everybody in our family had food trucks in New York. They do the Italian festivals. I'm sure you might be aware of them throughout New York. And then in the summertime, I mean, in the wintertime, they would take their sausage trailer and park it up on a street corner. And that's how we made money for our family. When I became 17 years old, and I wanted to enter the workforce, going to college and doing that route was not in our family DNA. It was time for me to take an old beat up trailer and turn it into a sausage trailer and do my own route of festivals with my then girlfriend, now wife, now. And we parked it on street corners in New York for the wintertime. From there, I hooked up with Lowe's, and they wanted me to open up 17 of those. They were called Dominic's of New York trailers at the time, sausage trailers, in Virginia. And that's how I kind of started on this journey. Over the years, that concept I actually grew it to 175 locations before I sold it. But over the years, I have developed dozens of concepts, and I have worked with, coached, mentored thousands of operators. And that kind of brings me to where we are now. This industry is hard, and without question, it's addictive. I mean, you interview people all the time. The food service industry is a difficult. I shouldn't say it's difficult. It's difficult because it's a lot of hours,
Yeah.
and it's almost thankless hours. When you want to be home with your family, that's when you have to be at your restaurant serving other people, other families. But it's difficult, and that kind of gets to a lot of people in this business. The interesting part about it, it's actually easy to make money in this industry once you know how.
Yeah.
And that's what my book does. It actually tells you how. We opened up Augie's, what we were just talking about before. I ended up opening up Augie's, and the first 6 months was that feeling out period. If you ever see a restaurant that is incredibly popular from day one, that's because they were lucky. There's no way they could have known all of the challenges that they were going to face in their first year. And it was the same thing for Augie's Draft Room, which was my newest concept that I opened in St. Augustine. The first 6 months, we only grossed about $200,000, which was mostly beer because it was a self-serve tap house. And, 30 grand plus a month in beer sales is not bad. You
Yeah.
could live with that, but it wasn't enough. $200,000 not enough to support a restaurant. So I went on the journey to actually make all the adjustments and everything like that. And, throw in COVID during my first 2 years. But 2 years later, we're grossing $2 million in only 1,900 square feet. And that's what I wanted to write a book. I wanted to tell people how to do that.
Yeah.
And that's what this book does.
It's interesting. I moved to a community in January of 2020, right before everything shut down, and there was a barbecue joint down the street, and it was on an outlet road. And I always thought I want to go in there and get a plate. And COVID shut it down, and I just forgot about it, and then it went out of business.
Right.
And they opened up this place called the American or Iron Horse, an American bar and grill. That place is packed all the time. And I keep thinking what you just said. What the hell did they do? How did this happen? And I think it's what you said. I think part of it's luck. They do have good food. I've been in there, but I think a part of it was just all of the stars aligned. It's weird how things go viral. You just can't chart it.
That's right. You can't. You don't know. There's a great book, The Tipping Point. I don't know if you ever read it by Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah.
It was written way before going viral was a thing. Obviously, it was written in the
Huh?
70s or 80s. But the one thing that he did, he talks about how different concepts or different products. He tried to pinpoint the day they became viral. So he was able to trace it back. But his biggest thing at the end was we don't know why they go viral. They just do. We could show you afterwards why it went viral, but you can't replicate it.
Yeah.
You just have to be lucky to get that, or you have to make adjustments and finally get to that spot.
I remember the first book I read was Freakonomics, and he would talk
Great
about,
book.
yeah, just things that would happen. Like, why didn't poverty get so crazy in the 90s? And legislation that was enacted and things that happened and the crackdown on welfare. And there was all of these factors that turned into this big tsunami, but it took time and it was very slow and methodical. And it's just so interesting how he preens into social psychology in such an intuitive way. I love it.
Exactly. Great book. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so has it been a foregone conclusion that you were going to get into the food industry? Was it in your DNA, your bloodline?
Yeah, yeah. I know of nothing else. My grandfather was in this industry from when he came from Italy, and my fathers, my uncles, everybody. Even now, I have cousin. I don't know of any cousin that's not in this industry in some degree or another. It's
Yeah.
real interesting when you're in an entrepreneurial family. Of
Yeah. Well,
course, they
my
didn't
dad,
call it being an entrepreneur back then. Back then, we were just hustling.
yeah, right. Exactly. That's the thing. My dad was born in Brooklyn and raised in Long Island, and his sister married a Severoli, and they have a pasta company, and they had a pastry shop. And I was always curious why my dad didn't get into food because he loved it, and he ended up getting into car sales, but it just seemed like a natural fit for him. But I guess maybe he knew something about the industry and didn't want. I'm not sure if it may have just been too much, but
I'm going to say that your father was smarter than me. Just 'cause not an easy industry.
But realistically, if you look back, it seems as though it's provided you a pretty good life. Are you
Yes,
happy?
yes. Oh
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I love what I do. I
yeah,
mean, I love being with the customers. I love figuring out things in our industry that other people can't figure out. I like being able to just kind of sit there and envision what it could be. When you're standing it, I call it the box. When you're in the box and especially if it's not making money, like just to envision what changes can be made. If I'm creating a new product, I envision it from when the customer orders it all the way through to when it's delivered to the table, just to make sure every piece of it is right. I love that. It's just figuring out a puzzle to me.
So, drafting a dream, what finally made you want to write this and to get it out there? What was the moment where you were like, this needs to happen?
I guess more than anything, I had some time the first time. After Augie's Draft Room, and that's the name of my restaurant. I don't know if I said that, the newest one we created. When we kind of reached that $2 million mark, and I thought it would be fun to write an article about how I did it. And then the article turned out to be 20 pages long, and I don't think anybody would have wanted to print that article. And I realized I had a book. I started including all the rules that I had that I've developed over the years. I have 16 rules that you have to follow if you want to be successful. And those were developed since I'm a teenager. You just start writing them down and tweaking them and creating them. Quite honestly, anytime I ever work with anybody and I put these rules in front of them, it's the worst time that I have to work with them because I'm shining a light on everything they're doing wrong. And it's just difficult, but you have to do it. You got to find out what you're doing wrong before you can fix it.
Yeah,
So yeah, this is why I wanted to write a book. I wanted to write a book to finally tell everybody this is how you become successful in this industry. But more than that, when you go to the beginning of the book, I start to take you through the process of whether or not you're even qualified to be in this industry.
yeah,
Most of the people that fail, it's because they not only they shouldn't be in the restaurant industry, they probably shouldn't be in business at all.
yeah.
Um, and it's a mindset, and they need to figure that out. And I take them through that process. I call it know thyself to kind of figure out whether or not you're qualified to be in this industry.
Who's been your hero in your life?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know if I could point to any. I mean, besides my family members and things like that, things that have been people that have mentored me along the way. Nobody that you would know. I don't think that I have a person that I look up to and say I want to be just like that person. That's a weird thing to think about. I never really thought about that.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this then. In the world of restauranting and that enterprise, is there anybody out there that's fascinating that you would love to meet, spend some time with them, and by osmosis soak up what they do or see how it works?
The person I wanted to meet the most, I was fortunate enough to meet with him when I started creating Dominic's of New York. That was the name of our food truck business. We franchised it, and I got to meet Tony Martino, who is the who is a franchise king. He started Amco, Mako, and stuff like that. And it was an interesting time to hear. I got to sit on his yacht of all places at one of his conferences. And first of all, meeting him ultimately wasn't as great as I thought it would be. I thought he was going to just give me this incredible knowledge that was going to take my business to a new level. And basically, he taught me about the franchise industry, which is a very difficult industry to be in, very litigious, difficult industry to be in. But it was fascinating to meet him. The most fascinating part about him was my uncle owns an Amco years ago. And Tony Martino had an AMCO franchise. That's what he franchised first. And he told me when I was sitting on his yacht, he's like, don't worry about everybody that you sell to in the franchise world. It's not your job to make them successful. They have to want to be successful themselves, the whole thing. And he said, the cream will always rise to the top. My uncle Vinny, told me years ago he went to go sit with Tony Martino about another operation they were opening up locally. And he looked at my uncle and he said, listen, the cream is always going to rise to the top. Don't worry about everybody else and just worry about yourself. And it's the truth
Yeah.
in that industry.
So, what has been the motivation for you all these years to consistently put out a top shelf product, to stay motivated? What has that been for you? What's been that motivation?
I like to figure out puzzles. I like to succeed. It's what drives me. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a natural born entrepreneur, and I'm always thinking about how to make things better. And that's my motivation all the time. It's never ever been, of course, I want to be successful. We all want to be successful. Don't get me wrong. We all want to make a lot of money too. But that isn't what drove me all the time. It was actually just figuring out things that other people could not figure out, how to make this work where other people couldn't do it.
So, of all of these advents in technology and progress that you've seen throughout the decades of running your own business, we're on the cusp of AI. There's always something that's lurking on the edge. What has been one of the biggest like movements or technological advancements that you've seen that has been the most beneficial to the industry?
I think that, well, first one, and technology wise, and the reason why I opened up all these draft room is it's a self-serve tap house. And that is something very new to the industry. I always kind of have a couple of ideas that I'd like to actually open. They're always kind of floating around my head. I'm sure they're floating around lots of people's heads. And it's just looking for the right location for that particular idea. And when I realized I wanted to go back into the restaurant industry after we moved to Florida, I wanted to open up a business. Didn't know which restaurant it was, kind of restaurant it was going to be, but it was going to be somewhere in St. Augustine. Seeing downtown St. Augustine and the amount of people walking around and the lack of places to get a beer, I said, this is a self-serve tap house dream. And that technology was, I think it's going to change the industry.
Absolutely.
I don't have waitresses anymore. We have food runners. We don't have to, I don't have bartenders.
Yeah.
And I have a restaurant that sells close to $700,000 a year in beer, and I don't have a bartender.
Wow.
That's changing the industry. It also allows me to pay my other employees more money, which, gives you a better employee as well.
Yeah, for sure. So
But
what,
just on that same note, and I hate to even go through it,
sure.
asking where the technology has brought us today is nothing compared to where it's going.
Yeah.
It's staggering where it's going. I go to all, I mean, I stay on top of, I go to all the food shows and I read everything I can about, especially about AI and robots that are coming in the future. It is going to change. I believe that in 20 years, you're not going to have restaurants with any employees at all.
Wow.
And it sounds crazy to think about it, but in a world where you're going to walk into a restaurant and you're going to see a robot named Tia, and she's going to recognize you with facial recognition and know the type of drink you want and say, John, would you like to sit in the same place you sat last week? In the meantime, why don't you go up and see the bartender named Tipsy, and with 8 arms, Tipsy will make you your drink, and Flippy is in the kitchen. And I'm saying all these names and these kind of weird names. All of that is already happening.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to see that Flippy, he's operating in Denny's already. If you
Yeah.
want to see, I'm calling it a he. I don't know why. It. If you want to see Tipsy, Tipsy's operating in Vegas already. These things are already happening. In 10 years from now, I don't know if we'll need employees. It's
Yeah.
really something. It's absolutely amazing.
And there's a sushi place in downtown Kansas City that has a conveyor belt and they have
Mhm.
robots that bring your drinks out. Like I see it already happening. It's
Exactly.
wild, man. It's wild. So let me ask you this. If you have a dream tonight, ran into that 17-year-old version of you that just got your first food truck, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained along the way, what advice would you impart on that young version of you?
First thing I would tell him is buy Apple stock.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
just go buy it.
Just do it.
Just do it. Don't think about it. Just do it. Put it in a safety deposit box and revisit it in 40 years. The hardest thing, the biggest thing I would tell myself, it was probably to trust my own judgment. I spent a lot of time, especially early in my career, listening to people I perceived who were smarter than me, people that may have had more education than me, and maybe were more successful. Although, of course, I should listen to them. I should internalize everything and then make my decisions. Trust your own decision, trust your own gut. That is absolutely what I would tell my 17-year-old self.
So there's been a mountain of things that you've accomplished and done for yourself and for your employees and for everyone around you. But at the end of the day, what are you ultimately the proudest of in your career?
Oh, my career. At this point, the part that gives me the most joy is I wrote a book.
Yeah.
That's it may not sound like a big deal to most people, but I've lived my life working in restaurants. I've lived my life to be able to say that I wrote a book it feels great. Let's hope it becomes successful. Um, but that's probably the thing I'm most proud about.
So at the end of the day, everyone out there sees you in a different light. Everyone that buys your book, everyone that works for you, family, friends, everyone around you, but you run the show. Who do you think you are? What's your perception of yourself?
Great question. My perception of myself is I am an incredibly hard worker, and I have the ability to see things that this is maybe sounds too self-serving, but I have the ability to see things that other people don't see. I know that sounds crazy, but it seems like I have the ability to create solutions for challenges before other people even know that there's a problem. And I'm saying that about myself, but you interview a lot of entrepreneurs. That's not abnormal. With successful entrepreneurs, they have that ability, and I'm in that group. Thank God. I feel good about that. Um,
So if anyone wants, I think we kind of scratched the surface here. If anyone wants to pick up a copy of Drafting a Dream, reach out, learn more about you, any of the good business, where can they go?
they could go Amazon. Book
Okay.
is for sale. Recording right now, it's not, but I believe it'll be up tomorrow. Ready to go. They can also at johnfelico.com. They can hit me up at not .com at johnfelico. They can get me on any social media platform.
Okay. Wonderful, John. Hey, thank you, sir. Thank you for your time.
It was
I
really a
wish
pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish you all the best with everything that's coming your way right now. So sending out good vibes and best of luck with everything, sir.
You too. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Take care.